Black Sea, February 2022. Local time 23:14. The Russian Black Sea Fleet had assembled off the Crimean coast. 15 warships, 3 submarines, combined firepower that could level a city. At the center of the formation was the flagship Moskva, Slava-class guided missile cruiser, 12-510, armed with 16 P-1000 Vulcan anti-ship missiles, each capable of sinking an aircraft carrier. The Moskva had been the pride of the Black Sea Fleet for 41 years. It had patrolled the Mediterranean, enforced no-fly zones, projected Russian power across 3 continents. Tonight it had positioned itself 120 kilometers south of Odessa. It was leading Ukraine's naval blockade, preventing weapons shipments, cutting maritime supply lines. The mission was strategic. The formation was textbook. The threat assessment was crystal clear. Ukraine's naval forces had been destroyed in the first 72 hours of the invasion. The flagship, the frigate Hetman Sahadachny, had been scuttled by its own crew to prevent capture. The remaining ships were in port, damaged or surrendered. Ukraine did not have an operational navy, which meant the Moskva had no credible threat. Russian doctrine classified the Black Sea as a controlled environment. No NATO warships, no enemy submarines, no air threat that could reach the fleet. The crew operated at normal defensive posture. Radar active but not in combat mode, surface-to-air systems on but not fully manned, electronic warfare systems monitoring but not jamming. Captain Anton Kuprin was in his quarters, reviewing the next day's patrol route. He had commanded the Moskva for 2 years. Experienced, competent, confident. The second captain knocked on the door, entered without waiting for permission. "Captain, we have a communication from Fleet Command." Kuprin took the message, read it once, then again. "Intelligence reports indicate Ukrainian forces may have acquired Neptune anti-ship missiles. All ships are advised to maintain high alert status. Neptune missiles, Soviet-era technology, coastal defense systems, range 280 kilometers, speed subsonic." Kuprin had read the intelligence briefings. Neptune was based on the Soviet KT-35. Old design, easily detected, easily countered. Even if Ukraine somehow had these, the threat was minimal. The Moskva's F-300F air defense system could engage 12 targets simultaneously at ranges exceeding 90 kilometers. Close-in weapons systems could destroy anything that penetrated the outer envelope. Kuprin filed the message, returned to his charts. At 23:31 he went to sleep. 280 kilometers to the northeast, on the Ukrainian coast near Odessa, a different calculation was being made. 2 Ukrainian R-360 Neptune missiles sat on transport vehicles, mobile launchers, hidden under camouflage netting in a wooded area 3 kilometers from the coastline. The battery commander was Colonel Andriy Timoshenko. He had been with the Neptune program since its development began in 2014. He knew every specification, every limitation, every tactical application. Neptune wasn't old, because it had been adapted. Ukrainian engineers had taken the basic Soviet design and modernized it. New guidance systems, improved radar seekers, extended range, terrain-following flight profiles. Most importantly, they had tested it, not in combat, but in simulation, in coastal defense exercises, against dummy targets mimicking Russian warship signatures. Timoshenko had launched Neptune missiles during training, watched them skim wave tops, watched them evade simulated defenses, watched them strike targets with precision. But training wasn't combat, and the Moskva wasn't a training target. Timoshenko had received authorization at 22:00. The order came directly from Ukrainian Naval Command. Target identification was specific. Russian flagship Moskva. Current position, 43.7 darin, 31.1 dar-e. The tactical problem was complex. The Moskva's radar could detect incoming missiles at 80-100 kilometer range. Defense systems could engage at 90 kilometers. Electronic warfare system could jam guidance systems at 50 kilometers. A conventional approach would be suicide. Missiles would be detected, engaged, destroyed. But Timoshenko wasn't planning a conventional approach. Neptune's strength wasn't speed or stealth, it was terrain masking. The missile was designed to fly 10 meters above the sea surface, below most radar horizons, invisible until the final seconds before impact. But there was a problem. The Black Sea was calm that night. Minimal wave activity, perfect conditions for surface scanning radar. Timoshenko needed a distraction. At 23:40, a Ukrainian TB-2 Bayraktar drone launched from an airfield near Mykolaiv. Flight time to target area 37 minutes. The drone's mission was simple: fly toward the Russian fleet, activate radar, draw attention, make the Moskva look the wrong way. At 17, the Bayraktar appeared on the Moskva's radar screens. The Combat Information Center reported contact immediately. Unidentified aircraft, bearing 045, range 65 kilometers, speed 180, altitude 4,000 meters. The watch officer alerted the captain. Kuprin arrived at CIC within 2 minutes, still in his sleep clothes, looked at the screen. Classification? He asked. Probable UAV. Radar signature consistent with Turkish Bayraktar. Kuprin knew the Bayraktar. Ukrainians had been using them throughout the conflict. Reconnaissance drones, occasionally armed with light munitions, annoying but not dangerous to a warship. Distance to
42 kilometers, sir. Activate S-300. Prepare to engage if it crosses the 40-kilometer threshold. Air defense systems came online. Tracking radar locked onto the drone. Fire control solutions were calculated. Every operator in CIC was focused on the northern sector, on the approaching drone, which meant no one was watching the coast. At 0119, Colonel Timoshenko gave the launch order. 2 Neptune missiles fired simultaneously. Solid fuel boosters accelerated them to cruise speed in 8 seconds. Mach 0.9. Just below the speed of sound. The missiles turned southwest, descended to 10 meters above the water. Activated terrain following mode. Time to target 18 minutes. The launchers immediately relocated. Classic doctrine. Fire and move. The vehicles moved 2 kilometers east, stopped under different camouflage. Wait, on the Moskva the Bayraktar drone was now 38 kilometers away, still approaching. Kuprin made the decision. Destroy the target. An SS-300F missile launched. The weapon accelerated to Mach 6, covered the distance in 27 seconds. The Bayraktar exploded in a fireball visible from the ship. Cheers erupted in CIC. Kuprin allowed himself a small smile. Returned to normal defensive posture. Air defense systems powered down from combat mode. Operators relaxed. The threat was eliminated. At 0133, a radar operator noticed something. A contact. Low altitude. Fast moving. Bearings, range 22 kilometers. He looked at the screen. The contact was intermittent, appearing and disappearing. Radar losing lock due to sea clutter. Sir. Possible surface contact. Unable to maintain tracking. The watch officer looked over his shoulder. Classification. Unknown. Could be a fishing vessel. At that speed, the operator checked again. The contact disappeared. Reappeared 400 meters closer. Disappeared again. I'm not sure, sir. Radar keeps dropping it. The watch officer hesitated. The Bayraktar had just been destroyed. Threat assessment was low. This was probably a false return. Continue monitoring. Alert me if it persists. At 0135, the Neptune missiles were 12 kilometers from the Moskva. Radar seekers activated. Locked onto the largest target signature in the area. The cruiser's massive hull, 86 meters long, 21 meters wide. Impossible to miss. The missiles calculated flight paths. Adjusted for wind shear. Maintained wave-top altitude. At 0136, the Moskva's close-in weapon systems identified incoming threats. Alarms shrieked throughout the ship. Missile alarm. Incoming. Bearing 065. Range 8 kilometers. Kuprin's blood froze. Activate all defenses. Engage immediately. AK-630 close-in weapon systems rotated toward the threat. 6-barreled rotary cannons. Rate of fire 5,000 rounds per minute. But there was a problem. The systems were in standby mode. They needed 12 seconds to fully activate, to spin up barrels, to load ammunition. to acquire targets. The missiles were 8 kilometers away, traveling at 10 meters per second. Time to impact, 25 seconds. The first AK-630 opened fire at 0:36:14. Tracer rounds drew streaks across the water, a cone of fire trying to intercept the missiles. But the Neptune missiles were sea skimmers, flying at 10 meters, below the optimal engagement angle for the guns. Rounds passed over the first missile, fell harmlessly into the ocean. The second AK-630 engaged, firing at maximum rate, exhausted its ammunition drum in 8 seconds. One round struck the second Neptune's wing, tore through a control surface, damaged the flight control system. The missile staggered, lost balance. The guidance computer compensated, adjusted flight path, continued toward target. At 0:36:31, the first Neptune missile struck the Moskva amidships. The 150-kilogram high-explosive warhead detonated on contact. The blast tore through hull plating, penetrated 4 meters into the interior, exploded in an enlisted crew quarters. 16 sailors died instantly.
The explosion opened a 3-meter-wide hole. Water began flooding lower decks. 2 seconds later, the second missile struck. This one hit near the waterline, below the main deck. The blast ruptured fuel lines, ignited stored ammunition, triggered a secondary explosion that killed 23 more sailors. Fire erupted along the ship's midsection. Thick black smoke poured from the hull breach. In CIC, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in 4 seconds later. Red lighting. Backup systems. Kuprin was thrown into a console, felt his ribs crack, tasted blood. "Damage report," he shouted. The second captain was on the floor, blood streaming from his head. Hull breach, starboard side, flooding in compartments 4 through 7. Fire in ammunition magazine. Seal the compartments. Activate fire suppression. Damage control teams responded, closing watertight doors, fighting fires, trying to control flooding. But the damage was catastrophic. The Moskva had a fatal flaw in its design. Damage control systems were outdated. Soviet-era equipment, minimal automation, dependent on manual intervention. On a modern warship, flooding would trigger automatic responses, pumps would activate, watertight doors would seal, fire suppression would engage. But the Moskva required crew members to physically close doors, to manually activate pumps, to fight fires with handheld extinguishers. Most of those crew members were dead. Flooding spread, water flowed into adjacent compartments. The ship began to list. 5 degrees to starboard, then 8 degrees, then 12 degrees. Kuprin knew what this meant. Uncontrolled flooding, progressive loss of stability, capsizing. All hands, prepare to abandon ship. The crew began evacuating. Lifeboats were lowered. Life rafts were thrown into the sea. Sailors jumping into the cold water. Black Sea temperature was 8 degrees Celsius. Survival time 45 minutes. Maybe an hour. Rescue ships were 30 kilometers away, going at maximum speed, but they wouldn't arrive in time. At 01:12, the Moskva rolled onto its side. Water flooded the upper decks. The ship was sinking. Kuprin stood on the bridge, watching his ship die. He had given the order to abandon ship, but he wouldn't leave. The captain goes down with his ship. Soviet tradition. Russian honor. The second captain grabbed his arm. "Sir, we need to go." Kuprin shook his head. "I'm staying." "You'll die." "I know." At 01:47, the Moskva slipped beneath the water. The flagship of the Black Sea Fleet. 41 years of service, thousands of missions, dozens of conflicts, gone in 90 minutes. The official Russian statement came 14 hours later.
The guided missile cruiser Moskva was seriously damaged due to a fire caused by the detonation of ammunition. The crew was evacuated. The ship sank while being towed to port during a storm. No mention of Ukrainian missiles, no mention of an attack. No mention of 40 dead sailors, just a fire, an accident, bad luck. But satellite imagery told a different story. American reconnaissance satellites had captured the entire engagement. Missile launch, impacts, sinking. The imagery was shared with NATO allies, analyzed by intelligence agencies, studied by naval strategists. The conclusion was unanimous. The Moskva had been sunk by a coordinated missile strike. Ukrainian ingenuity had defeated Russian naval power. The strategic implications were immediate. Russia's Black Sea Fleet had lost its flagship, its most powerful ship, its command and control center. Morale collapsed. The remaining ships withdrew. Increased defensive perimeters, operated with extreme caution. Ukraine's naval blockade weakened. Merchant ships began slipping through. Weapons shipments resumed. Within 3 weeks, Ukrainian forces retook Snake Island, a strategic position Russia had captured on the first day of the invasion. The Black Sea was no longer a Russian lake. For Ukraine, the sinking of the Moskva was far more than a military victory. It was a psychological battle. The Russian Navy was supposed to be invincible. Advanced technology, superior numbers, decades of experience. And it had been defeated by a country without a navy. With missiles Russia considered obsolete. With tactics thought to be unworkable. The message resonated globally. Small nations can defeat larger powers. Innovation can overcome resources. Determination can beat doctrine. Colonel Timoshenko never gave interviews. Never publicly acknowledged his role. The operation remained classified. But years later, a Ukrainian journalist found him in Odessa, asked him about that night. Timoshenko was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "We didn't sink the Moskva. Russia sank the Moskva." How? They believed they were invincible. That belief made them careless. Carelessness made them vulnerable. We simply exploited the vulnerability. Would it work again? Timoshenko smiled. It already has. Multiple times. They just haven't admitted it yet. The Moskva lies at the bottom of the Black Sea, 50 meters below the surface. A grave for 40 sailors. Russian naval doctrine changed after the sinking. Ships operate farther from shore. Air defense systems remain active. 24/7 electronic warfare systems run continuously. But the fear remains. Because Ukraine proved something Russia can never take back. The Black Sea Fleet is not invincible. And every sailor operating in those waters knows it. The question is, how many more ships must sink before Russia accepts reality? The Moskva wasn't destroyed by missiles. It was destroyed by hubris. And hubris, unlike ships, cannot be rebuilt.